All right. Hey, y'all. It's Heather here with Underwater Panther. The work I do here sits at the intersection of moral cognition, belief systems, authority, identity formation, shadow integration, and power dynamics. Not as abstract theory, but as lived psychological architecture. I study how human minds construct meaning, how conscience forms, and what happens psychologically, relationally, and culturally when belief replaces thinking, identity replaces conscience, performance replaces integrity, and authority collapses without being metabolized. This is not a channel about opinions. Excuse me, I'm getting notifications. This is not a channel about opinions. It is a systems level analysis of how different minds responsibility and moral weight under pressure, and why modern culture is fracturing so rapidly along identity lines. What we are living through right now is not simply political polarization, generational conflict, or gender tension. It is a moral infrastructure failure. Institutions no longer hold ethical complexity. Groups demand loyalty instead of integrity. Individuals are asked to carry responsibility without structure. And the result is what you see everywhere: confusion, projection, burnout, performative certainty, and identity capture. This series exists because most conversations are happening at the wrong level. People argue content when the problem is architecture. All right, so I am still working on my moral cognition, belief, authority, and identity series here on YouTube. So I'm going to do a little recap of the prior videos and update you with where I am going with this series. So before we move forward, it's important to understand that each video in this series is a structural layer, not a standalone take. Nothing here is accidental or out of order. So video 1 was called Why American Politics is Acting Like Religion. We begin by mapping how modern political identities have taken on the psychological function of religion. Not because people are unintelligent, but because meaning and belonging vacuums demand to be filled. We identified moral purity test, heresy language, ritualized speech, and social punishment for dissent. Politics didn't become irrational, it became sacred because other containers collapsed. Video 2 was called When Belief Replaces Thinking. Next, we examined how belief systems can shortcut cognition. When belief fuses with identity, disagreement feels like annihilation. Thinking becomes dangerous and nuance becomes betrayal. This is the birthplace of identity capture. Not manipulation, not stupidity, but nervous system regulation through certainty. Video 3 was called Faith, Shadow, and the Collapse of Moral Authority. Then we widened the lens. We looked at what happens when institutions fail to metabolize their own shadow, when authority avoids accountability, individuals' inherent contradictions, moral dissonance becomes private, and responsibility fragments downward. People are left holding ethical weight they were never meant to carry alone. Video 4 was called Moral Cognition: Why Different Minds Experience Truth Differently. This was a major pivot. Here we introduce the idea that moral experience is not uniform. Different cognitive architectures experience truth through different channels: logic, emotion, loyalty, consequence, pattern, and meaning. This matters more than ideology because two people can both believe they are acting morally while experiencing morality through entirely different internal systems. Video 5 was called Why Polarization Fails Integration. We then examined why polarization feels stabilizing in the short term, but destroys integration over time. Polarization simplifies complexity, but it externalizes shadow instead of metabolizing it. It creates temporary clarity at the cost of long-term coherence. Video 6 was about why some minds resist identity capture naturally. This was the structural pivot point. Here we established something deeply uncomfortable for modern discourse. Resistance to identity capture is not a virtue, not intelligence, and not moral superiority. It is cognitive architecture. Some minds maintain separation between belief and self. Others fuse belief to identity as a nervous system regulation strategy. So, video 6 answered why identity capture slides off some people and consumes others entirely. Then we got into polarity understanding and integration by archetype. This is the video we just completed. So I just did a 12-point video, 12 different videos on each of the archetypes, breaking down each personality type astro-psychologically. Here we clarified that polarity is not gender. Polarity is function under pressure. We mapped how masculine and feminine functions operate internally, who leads with structure versus attunement, why some people feel cold, overwhelming, intimidating, or unsafe without intending to, what split polarity looks like inside the psyche. This video, or the 13 videos really, explained how each personality works under strain. It was diagnostic, architectural, and internal, and it set the foundation for everything that comes next. All right, so now we are finally getting into this video. So the prior videos explained how polarity expresses, but it left an unavoidable question hanging. Where is polarity actually held safely? Because polarity cannot integrate in open air. Without structure, masculine function becomes domination or withdrawal. Feminine function becomes overextension or collapse. One person becomes a regulator, the other becomes the extractor. And then we misdiagnose the problem as communication issues, attachment styles, or personality flaws. This is where containment enters. So, the prior videos for each of the archetypes, I broke it down starting with the most masculine archetype to the most feminine archetype. And I weaved in how each personality type carries moral weight. They are certainly different. I would highly suggest that you watch those videos. I am getting into territory finally. Everyone that I have held in high regard intellectually in the astrological and psychological arenas, I finally feel like I've surpassed. I'm no longer watching other people's videos anymore. I have been studying this topic for 10 years now, and I'm finally to a point where I am not watching other people's videos for information. I have created my own system and structure very well, so it is an awesome, finally, an awesome place to be. So it's extremely exciting. So now I want to get into containment. We talked about polarity, masculine through the feminine, carrying moral weight. And now I want to get into containment, which is the missing structure. Before we do that, I actually do want to pull up an ebook that I just launched. I just launched a few ebooks. I have like 30 ebooks on my website if you're interested. I've got 25 different series going on here on my YouTube channel. I'm diving into the generations. I have launched my millennial book. Someone asked me to create the down low and the double lives, down low shadow ebook. So that is up And I just launched the Masculine Feminine Polarity Identity Capture and Why Some People Burn Out. This is my most recent book. And so this is available for purchase. I don't think that I don't have a preview. I don't have a preview. Normally I do a free preview. I might still do that. I did forget to upload the free preview. But this is the architecture of moral load, how each personality type carries moral load. And I have organized them from the most masculine to the most feminine personality types, based on structure versus attunement. So the attunement, the relational personality types are more feminine, and the more structural, thinking, logical minds are more masculine. So, yeah, I have thought about the most masculine to the most feminine for a very long time. A lot of them do line up with people that I hold in high regard. I think Capricorn would be the most confusing to most people, and I did put Capricorn as the most masculine over Aries or the ESTP. So if you're interested in this type of thing, the ebook is available. So I do go through the 12 archetypes, through how they carry moral weight. I do not hear anyone at all talking about how personality types carry moral weight. Some do, some don't. I break down the cognitive functions. I break down the ego into 4 sections according to astrology and psychology. Astrologically, you've got your ruler, exaltation, left field, and fall. Psychologically, you have the hero, parent, child, and inferior cognitive functions. So I do actually break that down here according to each personality type. I do have each of my key cards in this book. So if you're interested, you can find that here. So it is an astro-psychological framework for understanding who carries the load and why. I do not know anyone else talking about this. So like I said, I have finally gotten to a place in my own work where I am not looking up to other people like I used to, watching their videos, taking thousands of notes off of other people's work. I am finally to a point where I feel very confident in my own work. So this book is about why does responsibility feel crushing for some people while others move through life seemingly untouched by consequence? Why do certain people burn out holding families, systems, and relationships together while others moralize loudly but carry very little weight? So this work answers that question. In the 12 archetypes, I break down each zodiac archetype not as a personality stereotype, but as a moral load bearing structure, revealing how different minds experience responsibility, conscience, power, and accountability under pressure. So, this framework, we analyze the masculine versus feminine polarity under stress, where conscience lives internally or externally, how responsibility is processed, how belief interacts with identity, how burnout, projection, and resentment form, how each archetype becomes distorted when carrying too much or too little. So you'll finally understand why some people feel morally responsible even when no one is watching, why others need external validation, groups, or authority to feel right, why emotional, relational, and ethical labor often falls on the same people, why certain archetypes are quietly holding civilization together and paying the price. So the list here is the most masculine through the most feminine. Aries will be triggered because normally they're number 1. Libra is going to be triggered, or the ENTP, which C.S. Joseph would be highly triggered because he likes to put his own personality at the top of the masculine list, which is incorrect. So if you want to debate, I am here. Anyway, so we have Capricorn, the ISTJ, the consequence carrier, number 1 masculine. I go in depth in each video. I've made a video for each of these personality types, so you can check that out for free. If you want to dive deeper, you can purchase this book. So we have Capricorn, ISTJ, Aries, ESTP, initiatory impact and intervention ethics, Aquarius or the INTJ, number 3 masculine, systemic moral intelligence. We have Leo, the ENFP, visible leadership and honor, Sagittarius, the ISTP, meaning making and ideological risk. So Leo and Sagittarius. So the top 3, Capricorn, Aries, and Aquarius, are very structurally masculine. Capricorn certainly holds the most consequences. They feel the heaviest moral weight. Aries, they're very initiatory. They get things moving. Aquarius, they're extremely systematic. They care about systems. They care about future. They care about architecture. Leo and Sagittarius are starting to get into the animation. It's like the movement. Leo is very much so about the morale. And then Sagittarius, they're about the meaning. So they both are very animating when it comes to the masculine. Virgo and Scorpio are in their own tier. So I do break these down into tiers and explain each group in depth. Virgo represents the internal standards and harm prevention. Virgo or the ESFJ, I believe. Scorpio, the ENFP, is all about power, absolutism, and moral thresholds. So Scorpio is getting into they are externally feminine and internally masculine, which is the same with Libra, but they are down further on this list because they are a lot more relational, more feminine. They're a lot more feminine. All right, so we have Gemini. That is Gemini or the ENTJ. They are in a tier of their own. They're very androgynous. They're all about translation, fracture, and cognitive load. So under pressure, Geminis tend to fracture. They tend to take all sides. Taurus, I always screw this one up in Virgo. Taurus, ESTJ, represents the stability, continuity, and resistance to hysteria. Libra, ENTP, relational justice and moral outsourcing. Cancer, ENFJ, protection, attachment, and tribal morality. So cancers are very feminine. And then I feel like I'm missing somebody. Nope, Libra, Cancer, and Pisces are in their own tier. So Pisces or the INFJ deals with compassion, dissolution, and boundary collapse. So each archetype includes moral strengths, shadow distortions, burnout risk, how responsibility gets avoided, absorbed, or displaced, what integration actually looks like, not spiritually bypassing, but actual integration. So, this book is for if you've always felt like responsibility hits you harder than others. Now, I am a Capricorn or ISTJ stellium. My moon, my Saturn, my Uranus, my Neptune. I am very hardcore Capricorn. I am Aries rising, and I am an Aquarius or INTJ Mercury, my thinking and communication. So most of my energy in my own chart, my own personality is top 3 masculine. So I feel extreme heaviness every single day, every single minute. I have extreme moral weight that I carry every single day. That is why I do these videos. That is why I write these books. So if you feel like responsibility hits you harder than others, this book is for you. If you're exhausted from carrying emotional, ethical, or relational weights, you're tired of being told it goes both ways when the load clearly doesn't. So this helps a lot in understanding relationships as well. Who's carrying the load and why? Responsibility, accountability, if you want language, excuse me, for patterns you felt but never have been able to name. You're ready for structural clarity, not comfort narratives. So, Yes, I just wanted to let you know that this book is out there. I am extremely proud of it. So if you're interested, do check it out. I just want to mention one more time that this book I have ordered from the most masculine to the most feminine personality types, astro-psychologically. I explain why. But I also go into moral weight carrying. So now we are moving on to the next video, and I will also be making 12 more videos explaining containment in each of the personality types. And I will also be writing another ebook to go along with the next 12 videos. So I am at a bridge. This is a bridge video between the masculine and feminine moral load, moral weight carrying videos. This is the bridge video into talking about actually containing, integrating polarity, understanding your moral weight bearing, and now how do you contain that? So, this is the missing structure. So, containment is not emotion, it is not control, it is not communication, it is not gendered. Containment is the structure that allows difference to exist without harm. It is predictable boundaries, clear roles and expectations, consistent consequence, responsibility held before crisis. So here's the truth modern culture keeps missing. When containment is absent, someone has to become it. So that someone is usually the most conscientious, the most integrated, and the most morally load bearing, and they burn out. So, why this video is a keystone: without containment, Capricorn looks cold, Aries looks aggressive, Cancer looks manipulative, Scorpio looks dangerous, and Pisces looks weak. With containment, they all make sense. Containment doesn't change the archetype. It changes how safely others can experience it. This is why so many conversations collapse into blame. People are arguing personalities when the failure is structural. So, video 6 was about identity boundaries. This is the next phase of the series. It is about conscience architecture. We are now asking a deeper, more uncomfortable question. Why does responsibility land differently in different people? Why do some feel moral implication even when no one is watching? Why do some carry consequence internally? Why do others feel moral relief once a group approves? So, until we understand that, we will keep misplacing blame, power, and expectations. All right, so this is not about who is more moral, it is about load bearing capacity. Morality is what someone believes. Moral load is how much responsibility their system absorbs when something is wrong. These are not the same thing. And pretending they are is one of the quiet engines behind burnout, resentment, relational collapse, and institutional decay. So let's define containment. All right. So most modern conversations collapse structure into feelings, language, or intention. And when that happens, people end up arguing about tone, blame, and personality, instead of addressing the architecture that actually determines whether human systems hold or fail. So here's the definition: containment is the structure that allows difference to exist without harm. Containment is what makes difference survivable. When containment is present, tension can exist without collapse. When containment is absent, even good intentions turn destructive. All right, so containment is not abstract. It is concrete, observable, and structural. Containment consists of predictable boundaries. People know where responsibility begins and ends. They know what is theirs to carry and what is not. There are limits that do not shift based on mood, pressure, or convenience. Clear roles and expectations. Everyone understands what they are accountable for. There's no chronic ambiguity, no silent handoffs, no unspoken assumptions that later become resentment. Containment is consistent consequences. Actions reliably produce outcomes, not punishment, consequence. Reality responds in a stable way, which allows trust to form. Containment represents time, space, and responsibility being held before crisis. Containment happens upstream. It does not wait until someone is overwhelmed, resentful, or burnt out. This is a core truth most people miss. Containment holds polarity. So no one person has to absorb the risk. When containment exists, pressure is distributed across the system. When it doesn't, pressure collapses onto the most responsible person. So, what containment is not? So, containment does not equal control. Control restricts agency. Containment stabilizes the field. Control tells people what they are allowed to do. Containment makes it possible for people to act freely without harming others. If containment feels like control to someone, it is often because they were benefiting from unstructured freedom at someone else's expense. Containment is not repression. Repression silences expression. Containment makes expression safe. Repression says, don't feel that. Containment says there is a place for this and a boundary that keeps it from becoming destructive. Expression without containment is not liberation, it is a spillover. Containment is not emotional labor. This distinction is crucial. Emotional labor compensates after structure fails. Containment prevents overload before it happens. When someone is constantly soothing, translating, regulating, reminding, or stabilizing, that is not containment. This is one person absorbing systemic failure. Containment is what removes the need for constant emotional labor. And containment is not avoidance. Avoidance removes pressure entirely. Containment distributes pressure. Avoidance lets systems rot quietly. Containment holds tension in a way that allows growth instead of collapse. So, why polarity cannot integrate without containment? So, the last 13 videos were all about polarity and moral load. So, how do we integrate polarity and understanding our own polarity through masculine and feminine and moral weight bearing and translate that into containment? Not just integration, actual containment. Polarity is not self sustaining. Masculine and feminine functions, regardless of gender, hopefully you understand that by now, require containment to integrate safely. Masculine function needs a container so leadership does not become domination or withdrawal. Feminine function needs a container so attunement does not become exhaustion or self erasure. Without containment, something predictable happens every time. One person becomes the regulator, the other becomes the extractor. One holds time, structure, memory, and consequence. The other enjoys flexibility, freedom, and emotional range. And then conflict becomes personal instead of structural. This is the key line to understand. When containment is missing, someone has to become it. And whoever becomes it pays the cost. So, identity capture and containment failure. This is where containment failure scales beyond relationships into culture. So, after this series 13, I'll do this video, 12 other videos on the Astro-Psychological personality types, explaining containment in each of the personality types. And then after that, I'm going to get into, I think I'm going to get more into relationally. And then I'm going to zoom back out and bring it into culture. Talking about identity capture, extremely important. So, identity capture thrives in environments with boundary confusion, moral ambiguity, and inconsistent consequences. When containment collapses culturally, groups replace structure with ideology. Loyalty replaces accountability. Belonging replaces conscience. Individuals respond in two predictable ways: self sacrifice, absorbing the system, or dominance, controlling the system. Both are responses to missing containment. This is why ideological certainty explodes in unstable environments, and that is exactly what we are seeing now. I don't want to get into politics too deeply, but identity capture is happening, especially in our youth with the protesting of I don't even want to get into it, but it's group, it's, putting yourself in a group, being captured through belief, not understanding integration, containment, yourself. You're just going along with the group. I just absolutely cannot. So ideology rushes in wherever containment collapses. It gives the illusion of structure without the burden of responsibility. All right, so the archetype reframe, why everyone gets misread. Without containment, archetypes are misinterpreted, not because they are flawed, but because the structure that allows them to express safely is gone. So Capricorn without containment looks cold because it is forced to hold everything alone. Aries without containment looks aggressive because action has no channel. Cancer without containment looks manipulative because safety becomes negotiable. Scorpio without containment looks dangerous because power lacks initiation. Pisces without containment looks weak because compassion has no boundary. So then the flip, containment doesn't change the archetype, it changes how safely others can experience it. So this is the difference between pathology and misplacement. All right, so we are not applying this to relationships yet. That will be next. Because once you understand containment, everything people fight about in dating, intimacy, resentment, and burnout suddenly makes sense. But containment has to come first. Otherwise, we keep blaming personalities for structural failure. Next, we move from the architecture to application. All right, so now we need to be very precise about what we have just established, because this is a point where most conversations go wrong. Containment is not something you add on top of personality. It is not a communication trick, an emotional skill, or a personal preference. Containment is the structure that determines how a personality is experienced by other people, by systems, and eventually by the person themselves. It is the invisible architecture that decides whether difference feels safe or threatening, coherent or chaotic. Without containment, even healthy traits distort. Strength starts to feel like a threat. Sensitivity starts to feel like manipulation. Logic starts to feel like coldness, and emotion starts to feel like instability. Nothing about the person has changed. What changed is the structure holding them. And this is why so many conversations collapse into blame, because we keep trying to fix people when what's actually failing is the container they are operating inside. We pathologize personalities, we moralize traits, we personalize breakdowns that are structural. So, what comes next in this series is not about labeling yourself or anyone else. It's not about sorting people into boxes. And it's not about diagnosing who is healthy or toxic. It is about understanding where moral weight lands in different psychological architectures and what kind of containment each one actually requires to integrate rather than fracture. Because moral responsibility does not distribute evenly. Some minds experience conscience as internal pressure. Some experience it relationally. Some experience it through consequence. Some through loyalty. Some through meaning. And some through care. And when we pretend those differences do not exist, we create systems that burn some people out while letting others float untouched. So there are 12 archetypal structures we're going to walk through next. So we're going to talk about load-bearing systems ranked from the most masculine leading to the most feminine leading and how they carry responsibility, conscience, and consequence under pressure. So I'm going to keep this structure from the most masculine to the most feminine. I was going to flip it and start with the most feminine first, but I actually want to talk about Capricorn first because Capricorn is probably one of the most understood personality types, as well as Aquarius or the INTJ. So I am going to start with Capricorn, the ISTJ. So for each archetype, we're going to examine how responsibility is processed internally, where conscience actually lives, what destabilizes them under stress, what restores them when containment is present, and what they are falsely accused of when containment collapses. Because when containment is missing, people don't just misbehave, they get misread. And once you see this clearly, something shifts. People stop feeling random, conflicts stop feeling personal, patterns that used to feel chaotic start to organize themselves. You stop asking what's wrong with them and start asking what structure is missing here. I am extremely systematic in my thinking. I'm not so much relational in my thinking due to the insane masculinity I have in myself. And so I am thinking about systems, I'm thinking about containment, I'm thinking about structural processes within people, relationships, systems, you name it, the all of the pillars in society. Why are all these institutions failing? That is where my mind is at. I highly do still think about C.S. Joseph. He is very extremely intellectual. I spent many, many years studying his work, and Libras or ENTPs, excuse me, they are very relational. They understand relational dynamics unlike anyone else. They have an amazing memory. I do love that. But I am Aquarian or INTJ, so I don't look at life like they do. I am more of the architecture, the systems. They are also systematic, but they're in a more relational way. It's just so freaking fascinating. It really, truly is. I like to pick apart each little building block, and I can't do the relational dynamics like they do. So this is what I bring to the table. I can't stand that saying. Anyway, so we're going to get into Capricorn or the ISTJ first because Capricorn reveals containment failure first. Capricorn is the archetype that shows us what happens when responsibility is carried without shared structure, when consequence is internalized instead of distributed, and when authority is demanded without legitimacy. Once you understand Capricorn, you begin to understand why so many systems feel brittle, why so many relationships feel exhausting, and why moral weight feels unbearable for some and almost non existent for others. So that is where we are going next. And I think that's all I have to say on this containment Let me check. I've got one other note which has fallen. Okay. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I've been doing so much research on other things lately. I kind of fell off the map. I have currently created an Obsidian account. I am doing a lot of research on all kinds of, deeper, darker things. I have been getting into the Epstein files. I watch tons and tons of YouTube videos. I am going to start clipping. I'm going to start actually organizing. I make tons and tons of playlists here on YouTube on like politics, on all kinds of stuff. And so I'm going to start saving the actual timestamps, organizing myself. I need to get myself a little more organized when it comes to that. I'm extremely organized with my notes and my book writing, but I do want to make different kinds of content. I have a lot of work to do on my own stuff, but there are some other things that I would like to talk about. So I am currently mind mapping, organizing, creating folders. Obsidian is pretty cool because it's more of like a timeline. It's more of like a mind hive. It's not just like your notes in your iPhone. I have like 7,000 notes in my iPhone, and the other stuff that I'm researching is more of like connecting the dots and timelines and dates and people, etc. So, yeah, I am also working on other stuff. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's definitely a lot longer than I thought it would be. I am going to be getting into containment with the 12 astro-psychological personality types. I will be making an ebook on this as well. Do check out my ebook that I just dropped on moral load and the masculine through the feminine. Highly, 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 highly recommend that book. It's only $11. It would help me out greatly, but also I'm just to a point in my, I don't know. It's I spend so much time on this business that I do consider it a side career. This is my passion. I put in so many hours that it is an actual job. And so um I take it very seriously. So like and subscribe to help me out here. You can donate, you can purchase an ebook. You're not going to find this information anywhere else. I keep saying that, but I am so proud of myself for getting to a point in my own research and career that I am I am at like a mastery level almost. I don't ever really want to say that, but my ultimate goal is to be an absolute master at this. And it's my own little, niche here, astropsychology. There's not very many people that combine as many systems as I do, so it's super freaking awesome. Eventually, I want to get into bringing other people onto this channel, doing like interview style debates. I don't care, just talking about, talking to other people. I do want to eventually get to that point. So, anywho, I'm almost at 500 subscribers. At 500, that is like the low tier of monetization. I have been working for 10 years to monetize my channel. I am 10 subscribers away, so please, please subscribe, like, comment, check out I do have Apparel, and I do have, I think, like 25 ebooks or so. I have not actually uploaded all of my ebooks, but yeah, definitely check that all out. And I hope you're looking forward to the next 12 videos on containment, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, y'all. Crazy world out there.